In this demo, we're going to talk about setting up the interactive toggle. So this is our example in which we are going to build an interactive chart toggle. But before we do that, let's take a moment to understand the problem. So let's say I have a widget and it takes me a certain amount to build it. So we call that COGS, cost of goods sold. So the cost to sell it has a certain amount allocated to it. So the story here is that I have some sort of improvement that I've placed on it. So in January, the typical cost was going to be $10, but I was able to take it down to $5. And so we have a net difference, a net savings on that. So what this chart is showing over here on the right is the new cost. And then in this dotted area, we have that delta, that difference. And what this chart allows us to do is actually see it. So if I look at the original cost, and if I think to myself, what would I be saving over those months if I implemented a new process? Well, I can click this and I can see it visually that some months are actually going to have some greater changes than others. And I can plan accordingly with my production cycle. So let's talk about how to build something like this. I'm over here on our checkbox toggle final. Let's go to our checkbox toggle example, and this kind of gives us the bare bones to get started with something like this. So the first thing that we are going to do is insert that checkbox that's going to drive the functionality. So hopefully you remember, you go to Developer, go to this toolbox, you have that drop down right here. Remember, we're not dealing with anything on the bottom, always the top. The checkbox is the third one in. If I hover my mouse over it, you can see it pops up checkbox form control. I will click that. And I'm just going to drop it over here somewhere, kind of over in the distance where I think it's going to go. So remember, it starts out with the words checkbox and some number. What I can do is I can hover my mouse over until it becomes a cursor, and I can rename that. So let's rename that to something like show savings. Okay, so now you see me click it on and off. I always do that to test it. What my testing shows is that it's not connected to any cell. So let's make it connected to a cell. Over here on the left, I have some places to hook up my form controls and also to drive some other functionality. It's always a good idea to do that off to the side and perhaps make it part of your transformation layer, your intermediate table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this show savings to that cell over there. So I'm going to do that the shorthand way. The way to do that shorthand is I can hold Control. I will click on this checkbox. I'm going to go up here into the formula bar. I'm going to type in an equals here, and then I'm going to select this cell right here. So I Control click the checkbox, go to the formula bar, type in equals, select the cell, hit enter, and there we have it. It's connected. So let's test it on and off. Okay, so let's think about this functionality for a moment. I had that chart that you saw. When I click Show Savings, that means I am interested in the total savings and the improvements, because those are the bits of information that we need to supply that chart. Let's just jump over real quick and see that ourselves. We have show savings on. Here I have the improvements, and here I have the savings. So let's create the toggle mechanism that will allow us to do that with the chart. So recall that in Excel, true and false is equal to 1 and 0 respectively. So if I wanted to toggle these data points right here, what I can do is I can actually multiply them by the show savings value here. But before I do that, I want to make my life a little easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select cell E16, and up here I'm going to type in show savings. So I'll hit enter here, and now that cell is named show savings. So over in cell I3, I can actually start taking that value that's in show savings, and I can multiply it by the values that I want to show when I would like to show the savings. So in I3, I'm going to type in an equals. I'm going to select over here in cell E3, that's the original data point. I'm going to multiply that by show savings like that. So I typed in show savings. I hit tab to autofill. I'll hit enter here, and you can see it produces a 5. Now watch what happens. If I deselect this one right here, it goes to a 0. Reselect it, it goes to a 5. So if I want to show both these data columns here in terms of that functionality, I can just drag this to the right, and then I'll drag this down. And there we go. So if I unclick this, you see they go to 0. If I click it back on, they show. So how do I create the opposite functionality? In other words, when this is a true, I kind of want it to be treated like a 0, a false, so that when I multiply it, these values go to 0. Excel has a function called not. Not always takes the opposite of whatever Boolean expression is being fed into it. So not true, false. Not false, true. Pretty easy to understand. So what we can do here is we can type in equals. I'm going to take the original data point right here. Remember, we're never touching the raw data. So in many ways, I'm creating a transformation table right here. So I'll say equals D3, and I'll multiply that by not. Not's a function, so NOT, open parenthesis. And I'll type in show savings here, and I'll hit enter. And you see that goes to 0. I'll drag that down. So now as I click this on and off, you can see that it has the rotating values that we're interested in. Okay, so how do I make that chart that we saw? Well, I can do that actually very easily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in cell H2. I'll go to J2, and then I'll drag it down. And what this will allow me to do is create a new chart with these values selected. So I have the header selected, and I have the data point selected in a tight little table like this. And I'll go to Insert over here. So we're going to the Insert Ribbon tab, and I'll select a chart. In this case, what I want is an area chart. So that is under the lines. And what I want to select here is a 2D stacked area chart. So this one right here. I'll drag this over here. Now, if I don't do anything else, I can hit Show Savings, and you can see that this is working as expected. And if you're really smart, you're able to figure out what it means. So this was the quick and dirty way to get there. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to format this.